Never run out of battery again with the INIU portable charger, the slimmest 10,000 mAh power bank that keeps your devices charged on the go. Stay powered up wherever you go. Click the link in the video description to shop now on Amazon.
Army conscription should be rolled out across week Europe in face of threat from Putin, says President of Latvia. Latvia's president has warned European countries to absolutely introduce conscription, as he dubbed the continent as weak, militarily in the face of threat from Russia's Vladimir Putin. The continent has been working tirelessly this past week to bolster defense, following U.S. President Trump's halt on military aid and U.S. intelligence sharing in war-torn Ukraine. President Edgar Rinkevich's government recently brought back conscription for men aged between 18 and 27 to have 61,000 troops ready for combat, split between active and reserve units. The Baltic country has a 175-mile border with Russia to its east, with Foreign Minister Krišjānis Kariņš saying last year that they wanted to achieve a state of preparedness to ward off a Kremlin invasion. President Rinkevich told Sky News, "Seeing what is happening in the world, the decision that we took, many other European countries need to follow that. A lot of people are a little bit nervous. People are following the news. Of course, strong reassurances are one thing, but another thing is other European governments have to make sure that we all get stronger." Despite the desperate call for conscription from Rinkevich, British Cabinet Office Minister responded, "We're not considering conscription. But of course, we've announced a major increase in defense expenditure a couple of weeks ago, and we do have to recognize that the world has changed here." The phrase "step up" is used a lot in recent weeks, and Europe does have to step up in terms of its own defense. The UK has pledged a $2.26 billion loan to Ukraine's war effort, underwritten by frozen Russian wealth. Last January, the Conservative Chief of the General Staff, Sir Patrick Sanders, stressed the need for ministers to mobilize the nation in a speech. With the British Army reduced to its smallest size for centuries at the time, Sir Patrick said there should be a shift in the mindset of the public, who should be willing to defend the UK against foreign adversaries. The Army chief would not support conscription, it is understood, but believes the British people should change their mindset to think more like troops and be prepared for a call-up if NATO goes to war with Vladimir Putin. If there were an introduction of conscription, it would be the first time in over 60 years that Brits would be required to fight. Mandatory military service was introduced during the First World War after the government passed the Military Service Act in 1916. Next week, top diplomats from the U.S., including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, will meet the Ukrainian delegation for talks on ending the war. Zelensky will not be meeting with U.S. representatives in Saudi Arabia next week for peace talks, as both sides try to build back their damaged relationship. The talk set to take place in Jeddah will see his team meet with Americans while the president returns to Kyiv after meeting the Crown Prince. In a post he said, "Next week, on Monday, my trip to Saudi Arabia is planned to meet with the Crown Prince. After that, my team will stay in Saudi Arabia to work with American partners. Ukraine is most interested in peace." Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia have all condemned Putin's grinding war in Ukraine. These major Russian-speaking cities in each country are of historical importance when thinking about the Russian Empire Putin follows on from. Geographically, they also all provide important elements, like coastal locations, seaports, industrial centers, or key borders. Narva, Estonia. Narva, which sits on the border between Russia and Estonia, was first occupied by Russia between 1558 and 1581, and then again in 1704. 97% of the almost 60,000 residents there speak Russian. It borders a river between the two countries, not far from Narva Bay. On the edge of NATO's eastern flank by the Baltic Sea, Narva is Estonia's third biggest city. There is a red line painted on the point where Narva crosses into Russia on a bridge over the river. Estonian border police told the BBC that thousands of Ukrainians have escaped war zones and fled into Estonia through this border crossing. Narva has welcomed Ukrainian refugees during Putin's war, the BBC reports. Klaipėda, Lithuania. Lithuania downgraded its diplomatic relations with Russia after Putin invaded Ukraine. It closed its Russian consulate in Klaipėda, which is bordered by Latvia, Belarus, and Poland on the Baltic Sea coast. The third largest city in Lithuania, Klaipėda is a major seaport. It has the highest number of native Russian speakers among Lithuanian cities. Under the USSR, Russia turned Klaipėda into a valuable marine base. Daugavpils, Latvia. This Latvian city in the south is bordered closely by Belarus and Lithuania. It is the second largest city in the country and well populated. It is also only 75 miles from the Latvian border with Russia. Daugavpils is historically a major railway and industrial point, and was part of the Russian Empire in the late 1700s. It has an overwhelmingly Russian-speaking population. Latvia has strongly condemned Putin's war in Ukraine and has been added to a list of all EU countries dubbed unfriendly by Putin. As we conveyed to President Trump, Ukraine is working and will continue working exclusively in a constructive manner to reach a quick and stable peace. On Thursday, leaders gathered at an emergency EU summit in Brussels and signaled that a £670 billion war chest will be amassed to help Ukraine in the war against Russia. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, called it a watershed moment for Europe and Ukraine. And British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer announced that a coalition of the willing would come together and devise a peace plan to end the bloody war. An overwhelming 20 countries are now lined up to join to protect against further Russian aggression. France's defense minister confirmed that his country was continuing to provide Ukraine with military intelligence. President Emmanuel Macron said that France is ready to deploy a nuclear shield to help protect Europe from any looming Russian threats. The world now waits with bated breath for Putin's response, after the Kremlin earlier threatened to respond to confrontational rhetoric from yesterday's emergency EU summit in Brussels. Putin puppet Dmitry Peskov said in a news briefing, "The EU is now actively discussing its militarization and specifically developing its defense sector. This is a process we're watching closely because the EU presents Russia as the main adversary." He further warned that the militarization could cause Russia to take relevant reciprocal measures to ensure our security. Peskov added, "And of course, this confrontational rhetoric and discussions in Brussels and European capitals are seriously at odds with searching for ways of peaceful settlement in Ukraine."